Now, for more on President Macron's visit to China and how it could impact the French economy, I'm joined by Remi Piet. Thank you for joining us
today.
Hi,
how are you doing, Rachel?
Good, thank you.
Hi, how are you doing?
So, how do you see China's role in advancing France's economy?
Well, actually, here we're looking at a possible partnership that would be in the best interest of both China and France. France is actually a strong player in terms of technology industry, and especially sectors where China is still a little bit behind compared to other sectors where China is a world leader. If you're looking at aeronautics, as you were mentioning, with Airbus, or we're looking also at nuclear energy, Areva is about to sign a very large deal right now with China of trying to develop nuclear energy in the country. So there's a series of synergies and series of joint interests, both for China and France, on a series of different sectors. France is right now seeing its economy strengthen over the last few months. Macron is definitely in a position of strength right now because his popularity inside of France has increased. The results of his first economic reform are starting to show with the decrease of the unemployment over the last few months, and definitely is trying to fill here a gap in the international arena with Germany and England being a little bit behind in terms of having to deal with their own domestic issues, and Macron is the voice of Europe today.
Now, let's take a look at some of the issues that Macron's predecessors did have some trouble with, especially job creation and labor reform. How is Macron faring on those fronts?
Well, you started to have a shift, a slight evolution of the unemployment rate in France during the Hollande administration, but definitely has increased during the Macron administration. Here's a question of increasing the flexibility and making sure that different programs such as training are actually adequate to the need of the workforce and the need of the companies inside of France. You have seen a series of reforms in terms of pensions, in terms of relationship between the corporate world and the workers' union, a series of reforms that were very courageous and hard to pass in France, but since Macron was recently elected, he was able to surf on some kind of a wave of popularity, and his personality also is a very strong strength to be able to move France forward. So you're seeing really France move forward as a very strong place for investment. And recent polls also showed that when you actually ask a series of corporate leaders if France is a right place to invest today, they actually have very favorable in terms of advising to invest in France.
Now, Macron, as you mentioned, he came to power running on a pro-business platform to really spur hiring and investment in France. And the IMF is saying that Macron should really take advantage of this economic upswing to push his reforms through. Now, how are these reforms being received by the business community and, say, trade partners versus the French people themselves?
Well, they're received well by the business community. If you're talking with the MEDEF, which is the representative of the business communities in France, they actually are supportive of Macron's reform. They were very much more antagonistic to the position of President Hollande before Macron. The overall population also is actually supporting Macron in his reform overall. And that's why you're seeing in terms of French politics today a difficulty for opposition parties to have a voice. Neither the Socialist Party, which is now really in disarray, or the right-wing parties such as the Republicans are able to really voice a real opposition to the reforms right now taking place in France and pushed by Macron with a certain consensus across the board.
Now, as we look at the growth, which sectors have really been leading France's growth and which ones have been more of a drag?
Well, you do have very strong sector. I mean, the French economy is very diversified here. I mean, the financial sector is pretty strong. You have key players in terms of energy, in terms of aeronautics. Technological companies are very strong in France also. So you do have it's not one sector particularly that has driven the French economy forward again. It's a series of small, medium, and large companies in a very diversified economy. And that's this diversification itself that actually is the strength of the French economy today.
And what about some of the headwinds that you could potentially see in France's economy?
Well, here the question is to see whether or not the evolution of, let's say, the exchange rate of the euro is going to play a role in the capacity of France and Europe as a whole to develop the economy. You're seeing the euro increase compared to the US dollar right now. It's at 120, 121. That could actually have a strong impact on the capacity for France and other European countries to export. There's a series of issues such as whether or not you're going to have an increase of world instability that will increase the price of energy worldwide. That's not the case today. That would be detrimental to France. Right now, if you're looking at the strong parameters in terms of both energy prices, in terms of currency factors, in terms of the capacity of France to generate growth, all lights are either orange or green, and it's actually very favorable today.
And looking ahead, we see that Macron appears decidedly confident about France's role in things like climate change and even moving on from Brexit. How do you view the role of France together with Germany in deciding the EU's future?
Well, climate change and Europe are two of the main pillars of the Macron platform when he arrived to power. He actually ran on a platform that was the most pro-European of all the candidates. And it was actually quite brave from him because the overall population was quite skeptical towards the capacity of the European Union to protect and also generate growth for France. He has received this support from the French population that allows him to move forward an agenda of reform inside the European Union. He would like to play together with Merkel and develop some reforms. Right now, unfortunately, Angela Merkel is deep in the domestic troubles trying to form a coalition, and therefore Macron has to do the work by himself. But definitely the key question that we had at the time of Brexit, whether or not it was going to be a loss for the UK, it was going to be a loss for the European Union. We're seeing that basically the European Union is coming out strengthened with more cooperation and more synergies and collaboration between the different partners, while the United Kingdoms are the ones that have to actually pay for the penalties and will have to suffer down the road from the decision to leave the European Union. So as a whole, I'm fairly confident for the European Union. I'm fairly confident for Macron to be able to be the voice of the European Union and just drive on this capacity of multilateralism and fight against climate change, which are two key drivers and key vectors of cooperation with China today.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your insights. Remi Piet there from Florida International University.